Greetings from the third and final day of Adobe Summit. I'm Adam Justice, and I'm thrilled to be joined by Steve Cook. Welcome, Steve. Welcome to the tank.
Thank you.
Steve is the former CMO of North America Samsung, as well as the former vice president and worldwide and lead of worldwide strategic marketing and planning at Coca-Cola. Steve, welcome. Why don't you give us a little feel for what you're up to today?
Well, I've got a number of things that all intersect inside of the scope of the digital transformation, because it's such a massive undertaking that I feel for myself to stay current and for me to add value to all the different entities that I work with. I've got to have a lot of different touch points. So one of the ones that I cherish the most, and my editor-in-chief Tim Moran is sitting in the audience here, is I've been writing as Tim and Gail Keston's contributing editor for the last 5 years, and it brings me to events like the Adobe Summit, like South by Southwest and others, and I consider conferences like the Summit a graduate course in a 3-day condensed period. So that's something that I do. I work with VCs and private equity firms all over the world as their on-staff CMO to add that perspective to tech startups, generally started by brilliant engineers, but they really don't have the marketing and business development background. So those are a number of things that I do.
That's excellent. Thank you. I think it's interesting that you're filling that role now as sort of the earth is moving underneath our feet. The role of the CMO today, as you're trying to kind of instruct and guide people, is definitely different, maybe even as the role of CMO when you were, in fact, the CMO at Samsung. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about how are CMOs navigating kind of the responsibilities of an experienced business today?
Well, it's interesting. In terms of being an experienced business, I created shopper marketing at Procter & Gamble and Coca-Cola in the mid-90s, pre-internet, certainly pre-mobile phone, and so I've always believed in the power of engaging with consumers at touch points.
Right.
It was in the analog days back then, so I've always believed in the need. What's happened, fast forward 20, 25 years, is that the need's greater. The opportunities for businesses to engage with a computer in our pocket and wearables and IoT and all the sensors, it's even greater to do it. The issue is the complexity. So in the world of marketing, there are truisms that will be true 1,000 years from now. You still need to understand what your value proposition is as a business, whatever business you're in. You need to understand, who is my audience? Who is this product solving problems for? But what's changed is that businesses and functions in businesses of any size cannot operate in a silo anymore. If you do that, that will be a painful road to destruction. And so to your question, the CMO should be, I believe, in any organization, the person and the function that is the closest to the consumer, closest to your value chain, and certainly needs to understand the entire enterprise, needs to understand how to code, even if you're not an engineer. I think it's the CMO's role today, and this is what we write about a lot at CMO.com, is to be the inspiration, the galvanizer of all the departments, to get everybody to play beautiful music in an orchestra, but not to do it alone. This is a C-suite function, and it's very important for the CTO and CIO and CMO to come together strategically, check their egos at the door, figure out what that roadmap is, inspire the entire organization and all the partners together, just like we see here at the Summit. That's what I'm getting goosebumps right now. That's what I love about the Summit. You can see the talk being walked by Adobe employees, by customers and strategic partners. So this is a 3-day snapshot of what needs to happen when everybody gets back to their company.
Right.
And it's complicated.
It can be. I heard you earlier this week say, and as you're describing kind of the necessity and the requirements of the CMO and marketing, it conjures up a thought that I had about a statement that you made earlier this week, that marketing will persist, but marketing as a term needs to, I don't remember if you say die, if you said die or if you said evolve, but what do you mean by that? What's the difference and what's the evolution required?
Right. What I said in the Adobe think tank, hashtag Adobe TT, to follow that thread and to look at the hour-and-a-half Facebook live stream archive, is that I don't use the word marketing and I don't use the word advertising anymore.
Okay.
And the reason for that is, and I'm not flippant about it, is I think those terms in most people's minds will take you down an old school path. And as I said earlier, there still are very important, I'll call it constructs of branding and going to market that are still as true today and will be true forever. But what's changed, as we all know, in the digital space is we've moved over the last 20 years from push marketing and intrusion to a Seth Godin-ish permission-based marketing. And now we have engagement, right? And so marketing and advertising are old school. Now, I'm not saying TV advertising is going away. We certainly heard that from the gentleman from Facebook yesterday. There's a reason why TV ads are important. They create reach very quickly, right? But there's a new word for what we do, and frankly, I don't know what that word is. So anybody listening to this, please tweet what you think the new phrase or words should be for what we're doing in the digital transformation. I haven't found that word yet.
Okay. Well, I'm sure we'll get some good suggestions. I know another thing that you're passionate about is emotional connection.
Yeah.
So as marketing evolves, what is the stewardship or responsibility? You've described how marketers are kind of a center of empathy for consumers within an organization. I think I don't know if it's a part of that empathy or if it's something in addition that represents emotional connection. So how have you in your past and how are you coaching people now to ensure that the experiences that we're striving to construct are capable of emotional connection?
Right, well, I've had a lot of good fortune in my career. I used to run CoverGirl globally. I used to work on Max Factor. I worked on fragrances. I was recruited to Coca-Cola because I understood how to embed emotion into the communication of the brand. And I think empathy is the place to start. And this is what design thinking is all about. It's being empathetic to the user, to the human being, not your target customer, to a human, right? And it's putting yourself in their role, walking in their shoes, understanding how they use your product or service, and having empathy for that. That empathy should then inform marketers, product developers, engineers, everybody. And then through iteration and discovery and going back to the consumer quickly to find out if you've gotten it right, and you probably won't the first time, you just keep iterating. And building in the emotional components of what that individual, not a cohort of consumers, what that individual needs. And as we know, as digital marketers, we now have the capabilities to do personalization, to do marketing, I said that word again, to connect with consumers on a one-to-one basis. So to put kind of a summary on your question, empathy is a component of creating that emotional connection. And I truly, truly believe, because I've seen it in work that I've done for the last 20 plus years, if you discover the emotional connection, you probably will keep the loyalty, which is hard to keep these days, for a longer period of time, because the consumer will fall in love with your brand, with your service, as opposed to falling in love with features. Features are commodities.
Well said. It was said at Summit in one of our keynote sessions that emotion is the currency of experience. I think some might say that that's easily said and maybe harder to actually weave in to the fabric of execution within an organization. Have you done any thinking about like what are the KPIs, or how do we ensure that this awareness of emotion and the emotional connection legitimately becomes an objective that's measurable and that is that's foundational to what we're striving to achieve in our organizations?
Well, I think if anybody who's not here, you'll hear about this. What Rana, her name of her company is Livewire?
Lightwave.
Lightwave. Right behind us, there's an emotional booth. Right, where you have a VR headset on and you are seeing a video with very different types of situations, from a guy proposing to a woman, getting on his knees, to a puppy dog, to a police car, and sirens coming behind you, pulling you over for some infraction. And they measure your heart rate. They had a little wearable. And I think from what she's doing with Adobe, we will discover what those metrics are. But my favorite soapbox, and I ask every CMO I interview this question, in a world of big data, marketing always has had art and some level of science, but now the pendulum's swinging to science and art. And I always ask my peers, which is it?
Right.
In your mind, is it art and science or science and art? And I think the art part is something that people are born with, that they refine over time, just like an athlete, like Peyton Manning refined over the course of his career. And there's a qualitative component to discovering emotions. And I think that's where seasoned marketers play a very valuable role. The creative team plays a very important role. With your agencies, play a very important role. So my encouragement to everybody is do not forget the art part in the science and art algorithm to connect with your consumers emotionally.
Excellent advice. I think that's probably a great note for us to wrap on. Steve, we'd love to thank you for your participation not only in the tank right now, but at Summit as an event. Please look for the continued contributions of content by Steve Cook on CMO.com. It's been a pleasure, and we look forward to more insight.
Thank you.